Welcome back, everyone. I'm Angela Black. The show is called At This Moment every Thursday evening on Studio B here at Revolution Radio, freedomslips.com at 10 p.m. Eastern / 7 p.m. Pacific, or in whichever time zone on the globe that you exist. You can catch me with some exciting guests each week. And this week, just in general, I've got V, the Guerrilla Economist, here as my guest. He is a regular on Revolution Radio. He's got a show at 8 p.m. Eastern on Fridays on Studio A. And so if you guys are loving this and you've never caught the whole V, the Guerrilla Economist vibe, well, I'm here to welcome you to start getting informed. I know I'm going to. It's going to happen. Eventually, I'm going to just realize I need to be more informed. And tonight is a great way for me to start, getting my toes wet, getting my feet wet, etc. And what else? I've also got Bruce MacDonald joining us, so I'll get to you in a second, Bruce. And I appreciate you calling in. I know that you're going to ask some wonderful, informed questions for V, the Guerrilla Economist. And again, everyone, roguemoney.net, ROGUEMONEY.net is V's website, and it's a subscription website, $3 a month for basically knowledge aplenty. So welcome back, V. I think he's there. Well, maybe he's not. Let's see. I'm getting a Skype here. Dun-ta-da. V, are you there? I don't know if he's there. I don't know where he went. Anyway, anyway, I've got Bruce here, and hopefully V I'll send him a Skype and see if he's around. Are you there? There we go. Anyway, Bruce, welcome to the show.
Thanks, Angela.
Glad to have you. Nice to have you join me.
Thank you very much for having me. I'm very glad to have an opportunity to talk to V.
Yeah, let's see if he's back yet. Hello, V. I'm trying to talk to him. He says he's here, but I'm not hearing him. Maybe he's muted. Are you muted? Don't worry, we'll get this rolling. Maybe I'll call him back in. I don't know what happened. Okay, I'm going to hang him up and bring him back in. Let's see. Yep, he's muted. Oh, well, we're waiting for you, V. I'm going to hang up and call him back in. I don't know what happened. Okay, so I'm hanging him up, bringing him back in. Let's see if that works. Are you there?
Yep, I'm here.
Oh, good. Yeah, we were wondering where you went, and we're glad you're back.
No
V,
problem.
I'd like to introduce you to Bruce MacDonald.
Hey, hello, Bruce. How are you?
Hi, V. Very nice to meet you. I've been listening to you for well over a year now. I first heard you on Sean's show, and I've always wanted an opportunity to ask a few questions. I think economics is central to understanding what's going on in the world now. I was raised by an economist who did most of the negotiation on the Canadian side for the first free trade agreement with Mulrooney and Reagan in '88. Mm-hmm. And then my brother's a chartered financial analyst, and I got a journalism degree. And needless to say, Christmas dinner can result in a fist fight. The first question I have, and I'm sorry I didn't have time to listen to the first hour, and I hate doing these second hour call-ins because I'm afraid of asking a question you've already covered in the first hour. But I cannot for the life of me understand the strength of the U.S. dollar right now. Why has the Canadian dollar gone down? Oil prices are one thing, but I just don't see enough strength in the U.S. economy to justify the status of the dollar right now. Do you have any insight into that?
Yeah, you hit the nail on the head. Right now we're in a realm where everything is completely devoid and detached from any sort of reality or fact. The reason why the dollar is high, okay, and here's the thing that's being severely underreported globally, okay. There is a massive dollar dumping that is going on right now. And it's happening first it happened, going into the new year, actually coming into 2015, you had the Chinese dump a couple $2 billion worth of U.S. treasuries. Japan dumped a little bit. And then Russia, as of March, has dumped over 50% of their holdings in U.S. treasuries. Okay. Other nations are doing it as well. It's underreported vastly. And something very critical has happened within the last 2 weeks that is monumental. That is basically the clarion call that, they are heading towards the exit doors, that the jig is up, the party's over, and, they smell smoke in the theater, and the parties that know are quietly getting up from their theater seats and exiting the screening room. Okay, the thing that's happened within the last 2 weeks is that you had, first and foremost, you had the Chinese announce their AIIB, the Asian Investment Infrastructure Bank. Okay, and the AIIB is the counter to the International Monetary Fund, which is predominantly dominated by the dollar and dominated by the United States and the insolvent West. Okay, the G7, which I like to call the insolvent seven. So the AIIB was announced, and immediately the Brits said, okay, we're in. We want to sign up with the AIIB. We want to be a part of it. We want to be a part of what you guys are setting up. And the U.S. firmly and very quickly rebuked the Brits, saying, hey, how can you do this, blah, blah, blah. They created an uproar. And within a few days of the Brits going to the AIIB, you had, out of the blue, out of nowhere, you had the French, the Germans, the Italians, the Spaniards, and the New Zealanders and the Australians all have decided, hey, we want in on it as well. So everybody was just kind of waiting around the dinner table, so to speak, because they're all eating a meal, they're all realize that the food is terrible, it sucks. They want to get up from it, but they don't want to be rude. So they just waited for that one guy to get up and make that bold move to the exit doors, and next thing you know, they're all making a beeline out of it. The U.S. is being isolated. And every single one of those countries that have joined the AIIB, they have dumped dollars as well. Yeah. And now, how do you overcome this dumping of dollars? Well, the first thing you do is this. You got to hide it, right? So, we know that the Fed's been hiding. They've been buying up most of the dumped dollars in a lot of these bond auctions, bond auctions, excuse me. The Fed's been buying it up. We also know that for the last several years, Euroclear in Brussels, Belgium, has been one of the hiding holes that the Fed has been using to stash dollars, to stash U.S. Treasuries, and then we also know that Clearstream in the UK is another, hidey hole that they've been using, to stash a lot of these, bonds and U.S. Debt instruments. And we also have right here in New York in 55 Water Street, the infamous DTCC, which has been hiding a great deal of bonds as well. Now, what I do know about Euroclear is, which for those that don't know, Euroclear was created in 1968 by J.P. Morgan Chase. J.P. Morgan at that time. They created it as a facility to clear and float the upcoming Eurobonds for the emerging European Union. So you can see the plans for the Eurozone go way back. Okay, so Euroclear has right now a little over $2.5 trillion in U.S. Treasuries that they're hiding over there, and Clearstream has that has about as much as well. You couple that with what's happening with the DTCC, which is probably in the 20 to 30 trillion range. Now you kind of understand, where all this excess dollar is going, number one. Number two, they're keeping the U.S. dollar index artificially high. Because what's happening is, what I said in the first hour with Angela, is that, a lot of the printing that's coming out of the Fed is going directly to the banks. It's not getting into Main Street. It's going to Wall Street, and it's being pulled. It's like a reverse umbrella. It's being pulled up there, preventing any sort of money from leaking down, which is creating a liquidity crisis. Because there's no money, because you have a decimated economic infrastructure. You have a 34.6% unemployment rate. That is basically the 93.2 million people that are currently out of the workforce, the 10.6 million that are currently receiving unemployment benefits. You couple all this together, you have a ridiculous unemployment rate. You have over 100 million on some sort of welfare. You have over 52 million on food stamps. So you have a decimated economic infrastructure. Economically speaking, you have no human resource. You have any sort of economic activity or productivity. So you keep the money in Wall Street. And Wall Street is the biggest peg that keeps the entire dollar Ponzi scheme afloat. So what Wall Street does is they keep the money up there, and they use it to buy and sell not only their own stocks, but they also use it as collateralized debt instruments in order to float it in the derivative market to play hedging bets with. So this is where all this financial activity is going, because people are astounded that the more money that is printed, what's happening is not financial stimulus, but what is actually happening is capital destruction, and you're having a liquidity problem, and you're having a solvency crisis as well. So this is what's happening.
You can almost look at Wall Street as a synthetic exacerbation of the fractional reserve rate that the Fed gives. So it absolutely compounds the problem. And what this does is when the floor falls out, I mean, what is your time frame for like a bottoming out on this? A month, 24 hours? When the S finally hits the fan, what kind of time frame? I just see it as the gallows, like the floor opening up and the noose around your neck. It's going to be that quick, right?
It's that quick, absolutely.
I think listeners should also know that China and India did not want to do this. They wanted to work with the U.S. They had their top economists presenting reform packages to the World Bank and the IMF 5, 7, 10 years ago. And the U.S. had this arrogance about them. They wouldn't listen to anybody. There was no transparency in that global financial infrastructure. So, look, anybody listening to this show, this isn't an act of aggression what the Chinese are doing. It's a natural consequence from an empirical behavior from a country that is, quite frankly, no longer empirical. And so what I'm worried about now is like what this power vacuum is. Now, do you think the AIIB will form for intelligent countries that cede part of their currency in the new AIIB bank? Will that form a net to help the fall? Sorry, I'm just by the road here in Costa Rica.
Nice.
Yeah. Will that sort of like stave a global collapse now that there's another like global central currency hub like the AIIB?
Well,
and second, just one other tag on that question: are they gonna come up with a more solid equation for valuation other than abstract GDP? Are they going to go back to some kind of mineral or commodity standard to valuate that bank?
Yeah, all wonderful, great questions, Bruce. Wonderful, great questions. Absolutely. First and foremost, what they realize, and it's pretty interesting, the whole storyline to this. You hit the nail on the head. The BRICS nations, especially China, India, Russia, have been trying to work with the United States. Hey, you know what? You guys are going to really screw up the economy here. Well, let's figure something out. Let's come up with some solutions. And that's when the world said, hey, you know what, it's a great idea. Let's go into a global currency reset or an economic reset. Let's purge the system of a lot of the toxicity that's been going on, especially since 2008. Let's get it all out. And then right about where they're about to create or something, come to some sort of a consensus with this, all of a sudden you had the U.S. decided, let's go ahead and start a war in the Ukraine. Let's go ahead and start some crisis in the Middle East. And that's exactly what happened. So they don't want to give up their throne. So eventually the madman lunatic, the emperor without clothes, is eventually going to run out of steam because the Ponzi scheme is falling apart. No one's buying the junk anymore. And that leaves the question to these nations who are going to not only cede some of their currency and their wealth into the AIIB, but also the BRICS Development Bank, as well as the NIB, which is also being created by the Russians. It's going to be a few different apparatuses that are going to be all centrally linked with the BRICS Development Bank that they're going to be part of. Now, the thing is, what they're going to do is the East has learned they're bringing to the forefront what they have known for thousands of years, that paper has no value. So whatever trade settlement that they will create, whatever note of exchange is going to be used for global trade, it's absolutely going to be commodity backed. There's a strong possibility that it will be gold backed, and I think that's where the majority of the world powers are aiming at. I mean, this thing has been beta tested before. When we look at the controversy surrounding the Turkish, Iranian, and Indian where the Turks and the Indians bought Iranian oil and natural gas, and they paid for it in gold. That was something that not only were those three countries involved were, watching closely, but this was also something that was clearly and closely watched by the Chinese as well as the Russians, who were really behind it and really pushing it to the forefront. Because that's where they're wanting to go. That's where they want honesty in this. So they don't want to get into this paper nonsense game that they've played with the United States for so long, where you have such fraud on every level. And you absolutely hit it. There will be a commodity-based currency, precious metal-backed trade settlement note. That's absolutely going to occur because that's the only logical antidote to the paper problem. We have a massive paper problem. There's so much toxic paper clogging up the system. It is cancerous. It's gotten cancerous. It's gone necrotic. It is rotting the system. The only way you can do it is cut it out and purge it. And the best cure for this kind of stuff will be hard assets. Absolutely.
So I heard from a qualified source a few days ago that the oil reserves in the U.S. had been given to the Chinese as interest payment on the debt. Do you know if that's true or not?
That is true. They've been doing that for, I'd say, the last 5 to 7 years or so.
I'm sorry, I missed the question. Can you ask that again, Bruce? I'm just following along. And by the way, I'm really here for the ride, so I'm loving the discussion between you two. What is the last question you asked, Bruce? I missed it.
Your oil reserves in the U.S.
Uh-huh.
They've been signed over to the Chinese as and that's not even payment on principal for the debt. That's just interest. Right. So what that does, and the way my friend explained it to me, my qualified source, he said that's a huge problem logistically for the military because those reserves are for military emergencies as well. So because as you can well imagine, and as George Miller in Mad Max explained to everybody, and it'll come back in 3D this summer with the British actor, it's all oil, right? You can't run a war without oil. And so giving up the oil reserves is just amazing. And another thing too is that what V was saying about Britain joining AIIB and then France and Germany following. The Washington Post of all places did a great story on that about 3 weeks ago, and the headline was something to the effect of never in American history has a president been so humiliated in foreign policy. That they all told us they weren't going to do it, and they did it behind his back. I've never seen a president or an America this isolated from the world. Even we're doing in Canada. We're setting up most of our new trade arrangements with China and other countries other than the U.S. But we didn't join the AIIB because at the end of the day we're America, and on certain things we're going to stay together. But I think that might have been a small mistake. Now, getting back to the oil reserves being turned over, how can America two parts to this question. How can America deal with the Asian and the foreign debt in general, given 7 years of quantitative easing and stimulus packages now? And let's just start with that. That's the first part of the question. How can they deal with this debt? Oh yeah. And the second part is, when you look at the world and you look at production and you look at land, and remember that the biblical definition of wealth is land, and the biblical definition of money is portable land. Not that I'm a Bible freak or anything, but some definitions they just get really well. And so North America is still one of the richest places in the world for the land. I mean, we have 35% of the world's freshwater resources, despite what's happening in California. I mean, Canada and the United States together. We have more arable land than most of the world. Europe is overpopulated. I've been to China. I've been to India. I mean, if you, as a man, if you urinate in India and you turn to the left 3 degrees, you're pissing on someone's leg, no matter where you are. It's that proud.
Thank you for that visual. Thank you.
Bruce, well said.
Thank you.
Well said.
They don't have any of this, what we would call biblical wealth. And this sort of compounds the shame of this situation we've gotten ourselves into in North America, that, we've been given so much, and we're like this delinquent child that in 250 years we've squandered it all, right? Yeah. And my big fear, V, is that we're going to enter into some immigration for debt thing. Like, okay, well, we can never pay you back, China. We got this nice little city called Detroit. You want to come take a look at it? And we'll give you a 1.5 million no questions asked immigration visas. Just send Chinese over here and get this city back up and running again. Do you see something?
Well, it's already happening. I'll be glad to report to you, Bruce and Angela and all the listeners here. It's already happening. I live in New York. not less than an hour away from where I live in Sullivan. I live in right outside of New York City, but an hour or so north of me in Sullivan County. There's a racetrack there that I love to frequent called Monticello Motorsport Park. I love it. But out in Sullivan County, what happens is I think the Chinese have bought out 100,000 acres or so. They're building China City.
Oh yeah, they're actually spotting the country in general. There are many of those. I was going to bring that up. Yeah, they're ready to go. They're ready to go.
Absolutely, they're building China City up. There's 100,000 acres. They're doing it over there. They're doing it in Idaho. They're buying idle manufacturing in Detroit, all over Detroit. Idle manufacturing is being bought in Camden, New Jersey, in Newark, in Pittsburgh, in Cleveland, Ohio. And in Wisconsin, and in Wyoming, and in the New York Great Lakes, and in Buffalo. And people are asking, well, why are the Chinese buying all this idle manufacturing? Well, it's simple. When the U.S. dollar goes pop and goes to hyperinflation, and when a new currency will be issued, which will be devalued anywhere between 60 to 70%, the U.S. citizen will be one of the most cheapest labor forces on the planet.
Wow.
That's the plan.
Wow. That's mind-boggling.
Yeah, so our grandkids or our kids are going to be making iPhones at Foxconn for Chinese kids to buy over there in Beijing.
So we go to the
Chinese
bottom.
Kids wait online.
Yeah, we go to the bottom of the rung on the ladder, and we got to dig our way out of the salt mines the way they did in the last 3 decades.
Bingo.
And also, every time that you are referring to these events that are due to happen, you do say when. By the way, V, you never say if, and I've been noticing that. So, and I respect that because it's not an if, it is a when. And to get back to Bruce's question a few questions ago, was when? When's the time frame? Okay, here's the thing. In July of 2014, I had probably the most ominous phone call I've ever received in my entire life, to the point where the hairs on the back of my neck were standing up. My jaw was on the floor. It was a 4-star general. The guy was tapped to replace Dempsey as the Joint Chiefs of Staff. The guy was an Air Force general. This story was later corroborated by actually Rick Wiles, who was actually out in Idaho for a prayer breakfast and wound up meeting somebody who knew the same general source. This general is out of the country, but he was taken to Langley for an interview to become the next Joint Chiefs of Staff, or in waiting to become the next Joint Chiefs of Staff when Dempsey steps down. And he was given a lifetime FISA contract. Okay, and that lifetime FISA contract, he was shot. Usually FISA contracts are usually anywhere between 5 years, 7 years, maybe 20 years at the most, but this is lifetime. And the wording of the contract that he'd said was that he should be willing to shoot and kill American citizens on American soil. He should be willing to give those orders. He couldn't do it. He created an uproar, and they've escorted him from Langley with 2 armed guards. That gentleman, and then of course, he realized what he's done. He kind of became the nail that's kind of stood up. So, of course, he had to get hammered down. They started harassing him, messing with his finances, creating all sorts of problems for him financially, and a lot of stress to him and his family. And he said finally, you know what, he resigned, and he's left. Before he left, he's contacted me because I assisted him with that, and told him some things that he needed to do in order to get himself out of harm's way. But he laid out for me exactly the timetable, okay? Because the timetable, they laid it out that by the end of 2015, they expect the United States dollar to be completely undermined. Again, this was in July of 2014. So I said to myself, okay, all right, end of 2015, the dollar's going to be undermined. How? He didn't say the dollar's it's going to end or it's going to hyperinflate, it's going to collapse. He said it's going to be undermined, meaning its status as world reserve currency is going to go away. And he said by 2016, we're going to be in the thick of it, and that by 2017, the United States will cease to exist as we know it. And sure enough, with all the things that have happened with Russia, launching their double eagle, which is their counter to SWIFT, with the Chinese launching their counter to SWIFT called CIPS, with the AIIB, the BRICS Development Bank, with everybody leaving and switching towards the east, with the emergence of the new Silk Road, the absolute monolith that is the Eurasian trade zone that has emerged, the isolation of the United States, we can clearly see that it looks like that we're definitely on schedule for a 2015
undermining of the United States dollar. That's definitely on schedule. One of my other sources, who's a top source within the intelligence community, he's one of the key individuals that helped take down the Soviet Union, guy who was on a much higher level than Lee Wanta or any of those guys. One of the things, and in fact, Angie was guest hosting as a guest producer on my program when W called in, and so anyway, one of the things he says with the time frame that these guys have as well is 2017 is the date. And even before any of that, I think back in March of 2014, my City of London guys were all hinting at 2017. So all this data is coming towards 2017. And even the guys in the City of London said that, yeah, we're not going to allow any sort of real sanctions to really harm Russia because we love Russian money. And we will be going to the Chinese. You're going to see it. And then shortly after I was told that, that's when immediately, by the end of March of 2014, the Bank of England set up currency swaps with the Chinese central bank. They set up yuan swaps, which was the next step for real integration. And now we see the announcement that the BRICS are going to the AIIB. So all of this is happening, and I think the charade cannot last much longer. And I think that by 2017, this thing should be all said and done. We are definitely at the last phase of this. In terms of the fat lady about to sing, she is definitely clearing her throat.
So V, let's get to some.
I have a quick question. Okay, so regarding the AIIB, and this, I'm looking at an article right now about a guy who was leaving a Bangkok airport, and he was going down the motorway, and he saw a huge billboard, and it floored him, and it said RMB, new choice, the world currency, and so I'm wondering, is that the same thing we're talking about here? You know,
well, it might as well be. The RMB is the renminbi. You know, okay. That's the Chinese currency, and I think. China is posturing the yuan to be the world reserve currency, and it's definitely going to happen.
Uh-huh.
Okay. China, I think, is the only country in the world with two operative currencies. They have an internal currency called the yuan, so the peasants can continue to trade. And the interesting thing about China is if any literary buffs out there have ever read the French author John Berger, who talked about the decline of the peasant class and how this wasn't a good thing over industrialization, China still has its peasant class that has been farming the same way for 1,000 years. You know, they're an incredibly robust economy. And so and Beijing has this yuan floating around, and all this internal currency outside of the SEZs, the special economic zones like Shanghai, they use the yuan. And the RMB is what China uses as the international currency, what they trade. And that will become the new de facto currency, I think. I mean, I lived in Taiwan, from 92 to 94, and I came home in 94, and I was telling all my friends, China's going to be running the world. I taught English to 9-year-olds who do 80-hour weeks between private school, normal school, homework, and everything. I mean, it's like they're doing first-year university math in grade 9, and everybody thought I was crazy. You know, and here we are, 21 years later, and it's all coming into play. I mean, it was as plain as the nose on your face. What I wanted to get to was like survival. How does your average, like, North American, because Canada's going down with the U.S., maybe not as bad as the U.S., but if you guys go down 70%, we're going down 20 or 25%.
Yeah.
So
yeah.
We talked a little bit about this in the first hour. If I'm on the
making me feel bad. Actually.
And you should know.
So how does the average Joe like me, like I work in technology and software, I make a decent income, I'm not rich. What's my best plan of action?
Move to Costa Rica.
Costa Rica start.
We're starting a small co-op over here. We have 100 acres and 4,200 feet above sea level, next to an Indian reserve.
With lots of pigs and lots of bugs.
You've got feral pigs. We're applying to the government for a special disposition to hunt because it's illegal to hunt in Costa Rica, but they got to send a biologist out. But we got these nasty pigs, and they'll kill you.
They're not nasty. They're probably really nice.
Yeah.
Oh, what you eat, Bruce? You eat some good catch dogs, man.
There you go.
Oh yeah. We got the dogs and we got everything, but like how
get some of those Argentine Dogo Argentinos. Those are my favorite catch dogs. Maybe some Presa Canarios from Spain. Those are nasty as well with some pigs.
You gotta have one of those, brick-headed dogs like American Stafford or a Pit Bull or a Rottweiler.
I just saw one of those. I saw a huge American Bulldog. I was like, wow, now that's a dog. I mean, that dog's the size of a pig. I swear. Okay.
So what do we do? I mean, Warren Buffett said a little while back that, whatever you do now, everything should be hard assets. Everything you
that was
find.
That was exactly what we were talking about on rollsmoney.net. Go ahead.
What I recommend, especially for American citizens, if you're an American citizen, you are collateral. You are the collateral for the debt, and it has been. And I guess we'll save it for another show about the 1933 U.S. bankruptcy. But you are the collateral for the debt. So collateral for the debt, in other words, since you are collateral, you can't own anything, right? In other words, like the United States is the only country in the world where if you're a citizen of the United States, you go live in a foreign land, they want to tax the income you make in a foreign land. It's the most egregious thing anybody can even think of or conceive. So what I always recommend, because it seems as if not only the United States but the rest of the Western world has no respect for the rule of law. Rule of law they have no respect for. They have no respect for their own national constitutions. Their own documents of law. They have no respect for it whatsoever. But one thing that the Western governments all have respect for is commercial law. Okay, and what I always tell people is this: is you as an individual and as a person, you don't want to really own anything or put under your name. You have to emulate what we see with the large corporations. Like you look at your Googles, you look at your GEs, you look at a lot of these companies. They have foreign subsidiaries, kind of like Apple, where they have set up and they run their funds, they run their assets right through those foreign entities in order for them to avoid paying taxes, avoid paying various types of regulatory fees, things of that sort. It allows them to operate, under the radar, so to speak. And I always tell people if you can, if you can set up a foreign corporation in a T8 tax haven, like you have like Panama, the Cook Islands, Nevis, those are some of the places. And then you have if you can do it even one better, do like an asset protected trust, and then run everything through there. Like if you own a home, you own a car. And in the United States, you can't own a home. You can't really own anything, really. But if you're in a foreign country, you own assets, you own gold, silver, you own real land. Put all that under the name of that foreign entity, because one of the things these bureaucrats I realize is they are afraid. And I told this to a client of mine where he moved a lot of his things into a foreign asset corporation, and I told him, listen, any one of these bureaucrats in the country you're living in comes knocking on your door and they say eminent domain, they need to see this, they need to look into that, they need to see this document. You just hold this piece of paper to their face and say, this property and this land is owned by an international corporation. Do you want to cause an international incident? At which point the bureaucrats, their sphincters usually tighten and they turn around and run in the other direction as fast as they can. That's what I recommend people doing. I myself don't own anything under my own name. Everything's offshore. Everything's you have to offshore. You look at a place like Saudi Arabia. Okay, 60 to almost 67% of Saudi Arabians, their money and their wealth are offshore. Look at the United States. Less than 4% of people in the United States have any sort of anything offshore. So
that's a very low percentage. Wow,
it's incredibly low. So the offshore is the key, and having everything under a corporate identity. Look, in 2010, the United States Supreme Court ruled that corporations have more rights than people. I mean, that just speaks volumes. So I think, for somebody with means is, you have a company, you have all these things, you put it under a foreign corporation, have everything held there where, you are flying underneath the radar. And then, of course, being as much hard assets as possible. That's what I'd recommend. For people who are landlocked and stuck in the United States, the only thing they can do is try to exchange their worthless paper for hard assets now. Real hard assets that allows them, that when this paper bubble goes bust, that will allow them to exchange their hard assets for real tangibles and other valuable assets. So they need to get junk silver. They need to get little pieces of gold. They need to, accumulate these things that have value, because it's going to come very, very handy when all this stuff goes belly up.
Now, what kind of reclamation do you think the U.S. and Canada are going to go through when this floor caves in? I'll start with Canada. Our complete idiot of a prime minister, Stephen Harper, the worst prime minister in Canadian history.
I agree.
In our 2013 budget, they wrote in bail-in provisions,
Absolutely.
and we were told by our exiting bank governor, who's now the governor of the Bank of England, Mark Carney, that, this is just a regulation to be part of the IMF because of what happened in Cyprus. It could never happen here. Don't worry about it. And, the reporters in the scrum continually ask the same question. Well, why are we doing it then if it's never going to be needed? But they just lie through their teeth. So what they're telling you, they're going to go after everything. And you look at what's going on in Canada now. I was reading in the paper today that the province of British Columbia is thinking of doing away with traffic court, meaning if you get a ticket, you're stuck with it, right? There's nothing you can do. You can't go to the court and say, well, look, the officer is having an affair with my wife. I wasn't even in my car, and there's no way I should pay this ticket. Now, you think of that power given to a province or a state. It's nothing that whenever they need money, it's just, okay, go out and write, I need you guys to go out this month and write $28 million worth of traffic tickets. And don't worry, nobody can fight them.
If I may interject, we have an individual in that exact scenario that has joined the call. Steve Travesty is here on the call, everyone. And I just wanted to welcome Steve during the last, we've got about 20 minutes left on the show, so I wanted to welcome Steve. Welcome.
Hey.
It's Mr. Traffic Ticket himself.
This is beyond traffic ticket. I'm indicted. So, it's kicked up the superior. I'm not in traffic court anymore.
Oh wow, very
Plain
interesting.
as big leagues.
All right, wow. So do you have a question, by the way, for V?
Yeah, V. You started to the conversation went in a direction I was basically looking at, which was, what are all the things for us as as individuals to separate ourselves from what has occurred, because we can't wake up everybody and help them because they're too fat and happy right this second on welfare or their cushy job that has imaginary assets. But for those of us that are smart enough, to go in all these different directions. Me, I work directly with Sean David Morton. I've met you a couple of times, V, because you've been a guest on Strange Universe. And he does like the bond stuff. Sean's gonna write a bond for me when they throw the book at me, which they look like they're trying to do. I'm just trying to avoid jail time at this point. So but the bonds, I mean, if America kind of goes belly up, bonds aren't going to matter after that either, are they?
Well, that's what I was thinking.
No, when this thing goes belly up, the whole thing with private surety bonds is basically, I mean, you got two types of wealth. You got private wealth that's on the private side, which is held by corporations and individuals and government. Corporations and individuals, and you have the wealth on the public side. And because your collateral. And the bond number that's in the back of your Social Security card is something that's actually is traded in Wall Street houses. What happens is that once the currency that all this stuff is tied to hyperinflates, forget about it. It's going to be worthless. You can issue a bond at that point for $200,000 will buy you a loaf of bread. I mean, I'm not saying it will, but I'm just saying that that's what happens, because the main problem here is that the currency that's pegged to all these financial instruments is toxic. It's absolutely toxic. So the step that people can do, is again, at the lowest level that, if you can afford to, here's the thing, man. Look, go to roguemoney.net, click on services. There's a services tab there. There's a thing called karatbars. Okay, you don't have to join. It's an affiliate program. It's an affiliate gold program. You can get an LBMA certified 1 gram gold card. Okay, that has a what's called a kind bar security label on there, meaning it's the best of the best. You can take it to any vault in the world and they'll vault it for you without any question to its authenticity. They can punch in the serial number on the card and find out exactly where that gold came from, where it was mined, and where it was refined. Okay, Okay, so you can start a gold savings program. As little as you want to spend $60 a week. Getting out of worthless paper into gold, you could do that with karatbars. You can do, if you do like $300 a month, whatever you can save a little bit like that. You can get junk silver. You can get 1 ounce silver coins. Silver's still a great investment. Those are the little things that you can do because the whole thing is this: we're not going to stop what's happening. We're not going to stop what's coming. The key here is who's going to win on the other side of this, okay? If Americans wake up, they're not going to wake up now. There's a strong chance that they might wake up in the middle of this whole entire thing. And if they wake up in the middle of this whole entire thing and they do what the people of Iceland did, where they say, wait, hold on, wait a second. This is not our debt. This is your debt. 90% of this is your debt, Mr. Bankster. 90% of this is your problem, Mr. Politician, and we begin to jail the banksters and hang the politicians. Notice I said jail the banksters and hang the politicians. Okay, then we would begin to solve the major problem here. Because we don't have to go along with this. So the question becomes, who can stay viable on the other side? He who can stay, if the majority of us can stay viable on the other side of this whole entire thing, we have a chance and an opportunity, no matter how slim it is, to grasp it and to leverage it to our favor. Will we be the superpower of the world? No. Will we be the largest, freest economy in the world? No. But you know what? We will be free. We might be in second or even third world country status, but at least we can be free and we can start picking up the pieces of this whole entire thing, and maybe by God's grace put it all back together.
Yeah, and don't forget your primary wealth, your air, your water, and your soil, which is still the best in the world. You can be a billionaire living in Shanghai, but you got to breathe that air every time you walk your air-conditioned condo every day. You would if somebody said to me, you can be a billionaire, but the condition is you live the rest of your life in New Delhi, India, I'd say, no, I'm good with $80,000 a year in Canada or Costa Rica.
Oh, absolutely.
They're unlivable. And don't forget that this shift that's going on right now, where the U.S. is being taken out as a world leader, who knows? Whoever takes the crown, they're not going to hold it long, because all of these economies are cash rich now, and they've won at the game of capitalism. But you don't want to know what they've done to their countries to get there, and that's going to catch up with them very, very quickly. So there's that to think about too. So as I always say, Angela, you want your land and you want your water now. Those are the critical things. And V, the last thing I want to ask as we wind up the show is, understanding the breadth of topics undertaken on Revolution Radio, what do you think caused this? Is just straight up 7 deadly sins, Thomas Aquinas, greed and sort of blindness and all the things that go along with it, or is this more?
The end result was collapse. Apparently, I mean, the end result, the desired end result was collapse.
Who wanted to collapse the U.S. and why? Was it internal forces or external forces?
It's both. It's both. When you have a successive string of accidents, you have coincidence. But when you have a successive string of actions, regulations, and policies working in cohesion, you no longer have accidents or stupid moves. You have an agenda. And this has been a long-standing agenda. You really get deep in this. I mean, we got to think bigger. And when we begin to think bigger, and the more elbows that I begin to rub with guys who have served in the highest levels of intelligence in these alphabet agencies and the higher level up, you start learning that there's a certain level where it's no longer just nations and kingdoms and borders, but it is basically a game of princes. That there is, in fact, a cabal that sits on top of this whole thing. And I never believed it, for the longest time in my life until I'd say in the last few years. That's when I really became aware of it. I kind of shared this testimony a little bit, but I remember being in one of the commodity trading firms that I was working for, was a major one, and we're, in the midst of brokering a major deal, so I happened to be in the office 7 a.m. in the morning on Friday, real early. I was there with a buddy of mine, and we just got our coffees. We're walking down the hallway, and all of a sudden I see the lights in the conference room on, and I'm thinking to myself, why is anybody even in the conference room? That's I never seen it booked. We have a scheduling that says the conference room is booked at such and such a time. I just see nobody booked the conference room at 7 a.m. in the morning. How come nobody else knows about it? How come I wasn't notified of it? And as I was getting closer and closer to the conference room, walking down the corridor, I began to have this incredible, eerie, evil, sickening feeling fall over me. And as I began getting closer and closer to the door, and I kind of peeked in, and I saw the CFO, the CEO of the corporation, as well as some members of the board. They're all holding hands and chanting in a very foreign language. And these people on surface are Christians and Jews and Muslims and Hindus and Buddhists, but they all seem to be chanting the very same thing, and they're all sorts of, and I didn't know it then, but I know it now, what I like to call occult paraphernalia strewn about the table.
Wow.
In front of me. So that was my wake-up call. That's when I realized, wait a minute, this is not just a bunch of greedy guys that want to make money so they can go fly around in their G5s. This is something bigger than just money and power. This is really, there is something otherworldly or other dimensionally at work here. And when I began to deal with guys who were in the intelligence business, both on the American side and the Russian side, I began to realize there's actually two sets of people on this planet. There's actually two sets of seeds, so to speak. You have the human race, and there's a select group of individuals that don't see themselves as quite human, so to speak.
Yeah. And Bruce wrote a book that deals with this very thing. As a matter of fact,
it's very rare that you get the level of detail that you have about the economy and its finite expression and sort of like the background of it. It's like a mix of calculus and ectoplasm. I like it.
Yeah, Bruce's book, The Stolen Child, actually really addresses exactly what you were just talking about.
Really?
Yeah, you definitely have to read it. As a matter of fact,
absolutely.
For Bruce.
Where do I buy it?
Yeah, Bruce. Amazon?
You're just embarrassing me here.
I'm good at that. Come on.
I'm just a gentleman farmer in Costa Rica.
Amazon?
So, it's on Amazon.
The Stolen Child? I will order it.
It's awesome.
Yeah. I totally ripped the title off from that 1898 William Butler Yeats poem, but which is about the dangers of flirting with the occult. The Stolen Child, yeah. So no, it's just like a very, very lucid narrative. I'm quite frankly, I'm surprised you're allowed to speak, V.
Well, it is kind of interesting to listen to.
Do you ever get phone calls telling you to tone it down?
Yeah. I mean, the thing is, I've been told what I can say and what I can't say, I just play within those parameters. There's certain things I don't touch. I just kind of, touch it very gingerly, and I kind of move on a little bit without getting too deep.
Yeah, I was wondering, if there was a stop button, because the information that you give is so handy, if you will, and it's so real that I was just looking at the fact that I don't feel that you can be discredited on any level, which is enjoyable to communicate with you on that level. Is when these high-ranking individuals, et cetera, obviously they're coming to you because they trust you. They know that you're very knowledgeable, that you have an inside information, and they feel that they can share things with you and also trust you. So it's really interesting to as we wrap up the show, let me ask you this, V. So, given your set of circumstances, given your knowledge and your position in place and time, in space and time on Earth right now, what do you see as your continued journey and next step in your journey as a communicator about financial all financial issues and more? What do you see as your next step?
My next step is this. I kind of see myself as Harriet Tubman on the Underground Railroad, and I'm just trying to free as many slaves as I can.
Wow.
The craziest thing is I've reached out to mainstream economists. They know me, I know them. A few of them we've crossed paths in the past, but a lot of them are even terrified to even communicate with me. They've outright said, I can't talk with you. But I'm like, okay, fine. But I understand the game, and I think my greatest goal and desire is if I can't get people out of the United States I'm going to do whatever I can to make sure that they at least know what's coming down and the bare minimum of what they can do to prepare for what is to come, as John B. Wells often says. But the main thing is preparation. And if I can, sound the alarm and keep ringing the bell, so to speak, then I've done my job. And ultimately, I feel also, I feel like Harriet Tubman, but I also feel like a European migrant, who woke up in the 19th, in the turn of the 19th century, and here I am on the European continent, and there's no job, there's no opportunities, and what I have to do? Well, I have to get on the boat and go to the promised land. And I think it's the same thing that's facing me and as well as many Americans. We're woken up on a land where there's no future for our children. So what I'm going to do is get on a plane and leave. I plan on leaving, towards the end of the year or so. My heart and my sights are set on Panama, and God willing, I would like to be there and settle there with my family. That's the goal. Mm-hmm. I think people have to get very creative now. I think people will have to really begin to look outside of themselves and outside of their country to really, get out of the way. Because the goal here is to get out of the way. Okay? Mm-hmm. Let this thing blow through, and God willing, if you want to come back and pick up the pieces, at least you will be in a position of power to do it. Whereas, you're in the middle of this whole entire thing, you're not going to know what's happening. There won't be no news or information. At least if I'm outside of the country, I can see what's happening in the country, because those who live in the country will have no knowledge of the broader picture of what's happening within their own nation that they're living in, because everything will be in total collapse and chaos. So the next step for me is definitely warn as many people as possible and then get out of the way and try to come back and pick up the pieces, seeing how the country responds. If my countrymen wake up. Wow.
That is a heavy statement and also very matter of fact. And Bruce has already jumped on that bandwagon. He's in Costa Rica. I know some people that are relocating to Costa Rica. I may indeed, my husband and I may also relocate to Costa Rica, etc. It's crazy that we've got to get on the boat and leave, so to speak. It is really, who knew this would happen? I guess you did. And we've got Steve Travesty. I'm sorry, let me try that again. We've got Steve Travesty still on the call. Any last questions, Steve?
Yeah, I did. I just want to throw two names out there as kind of like a lightning round. What do you think about the economic perceptions that have been projected out by Karen Hudez and Peter Schiff?
I personally emailed Karen. I told her to take a hike. I told her to knock it off. I told her to go back. She's a show. She's a World Bank show. She's come out as somebody who's going against the World Bank. What happened? She came out, she spoke her spiel, and she went right back to work at the World Bank. Mm-hmm. She's not an insider. She's a show. I don't like her. That's my honest truth. Pete is a great guy. We've crossed paths years ago. Pete's a great guy. I've got nothing but respect for him. Love Pete. Love what Europe Pacific Capital is doing. Good company, solid guy. But Karen Hudis, no.
Okay, cool.
Thanks for the question, Steve, and thanks for joining us tonight. Bruce, any final questions for V?
No, I think. Well, why Panama?
You know what? It's a strange and long tale. One of these days, I'll come on the radio and I guess I'll share it with all of you. And Bruce, if you can, or Angela, if you can get Bruce's contact information, this is definitely one to keep in touch with Bruce.
Yeah, I knew you would. I definitely knew you would.
I'm all settled in here. I married a friend I've had here. I've known her. She came to Canada in 2000. We've known each other 15 years. I married into a family with 9 siblings, so I'm very. My Spanish is really coming along. Muy bueno.
That's good.
Yeah. I'll be going to Panama next weekend to renew my visa. I don't have my residence yet. Yeah. So, but we'll be neighbors, and maybe Angela too, if she and her husband come over. And but we're gonna do. I'm telecommuting now. I'm actually working for one of the big 5 Canadian banks as a technical writer, and so I'm still making the North American money, and I'm dumping it all in Costa Rica. Mm-hmm. We're building our houses. We're doing alternative construction. We're getting our meat stocks in, goats, pigs, chickens, heritage turkeys. Mm-hmm. We're going to do some permaculture, and But I don't want doom and gloomers, you know. I want people who, you know, you're working. Yeah, exactly. But,
all right, that's the end of the show, Bruce. I hate to cut you off. V, right. Thank you so much for joining me tonight.
Thank you so much.
And my street cred.
Give me Bruce's info when we're on the other side of the show.
I sure will.
Bruce, it's a pleasure talking to you, brother. Hope
you too, V.
Keep in touch.
Yep.
All right, everyone. Revolution Radio. My pleasure, V. Thank you. All right, everyone. Peace.